In the 7th year of my marriage to Julian, I finally conceived our child. I was excited to share the good news with Julian, but he abandoned me on a snow mountain for his beloved Serena. Only after I died did I learn that Serena's half-brother had a heart condition and urgently needed a large sum of money, and my insurance money was just right. Heaven has given me a second chance, and I will make them pay the price. Arya, be good and wait for me here. I will definitely find someone to rescue you. Looking at Julian's pale face and bluish-purple, shivering lips, I finally confirmed that I was reborn. Reborn on the day Julian and I were trapped on the snow mountain. Julian looked at me with anxious and expectant eyes. I knew he was waiting for me to nod. Okay, I'll wait for you here. I nodded heavily. Receiving my affirmative answer, Julian placed a kiss on my forehead and walked out of the cave without looking back. Watching his receding figure, my heart was filled with mixed feelings. That's how it was in my previous life. Julian told me to wait obediently in the cave, so I waited for him in the cave, but I waited a long time and never saw him again. I imagined that he might have had an accident after going out, or that he might have gone out, found someone, but was trapped by the heavy snow and unable to come back for me. Even until I died, I never suspected him. But when I really died and my soul floated back to his side, I realized that it was all a conspiracy. He just wanted an accident to defraud my insurance money to save his beloved Serena's half-brother. Looking at Julian walking further and further away, I reached out and touched my lower abdomen. 7 years, I waited for 7 whole years, and finally I got our child. But baby, I'm sorry, you had a father like that before you were even born. I waited in the cave until I could no longer see Julian's figure. Then I gathered my clothes and walked out of the cave, relying on the memory of my soul hovering in the sky after death. I walked for a long time, finally traversing the wind and snow to find the hotel where I was staying. Perhaps because my appearance was too frightening, the hotel receptionist even came out to greet me, handing me a cup of hot water and asking if I was feeling unwell. I politely shook my head, drank the hot water, and dragged my exhausted body back to the room. I didn't expect to see Julian lying on the bed, happily playing with his phone. Seeing me appear at the doorway, Julian looked surprised. He hurriedly put down his phone, replaced his expression with one of concern, and walked towards me. Arya, what are you doing here? I mean, how did you get back? I was just about to ask the rescue team to help find you. Watching Julian's slightly evasive gaze, I couldn't help but laugh inwardly. Ask the rescue team to find me? If he truly had such a thought, I wouldn't have died so tragically in that cave in my previous life. Did you really want to find me? Arya, what's wrong with you? Did the cold muddle your brain? Why are you talking nonsense? Of course, I wanted to find you. It's nothing, it's good that I'm back now. Saying this, Julian pulled me into his arms, his hand gently patting my head. I used to enjoy being held in Julian's arms, but now I just felt nauseous. Without a word, I pushed him away and went straight to bed. I'm tired, let's sleep. Perhaps sensing my abnormality, Julian didn't say anything more, returning to bed and playing on his phone with his back to me before turning off the light to sleep. I closed my eyes and didn't get up quietly until I heard Julian snoring thunderously behind me. I picked up Julian's phone but couldn't unlock it no matter what I tried. I had never looked at Julian's phone because I trusted him so much, but now I realized that he didn't deserve my trust. I remembered that his phone password was my birthday, but when I entered it, it told me the password was incorrect. Julian had once registered my fingerprint on his phone, but now my fingerprint couldn't unlock it either. The phone in my hand lit up and went dark, lit up and went dark again. Looking at the wedding photo of Julian and me on the screen, I thought for a long time. Finally, I made up my mind to enter Serena's birthday. The phone was unlocked, just as I suspected. On WeChat were Julian and Serena's conversations from tonight. She's back. How could this happen? I was planning to have her die accidentally in the snowy mountains, but I didn't expect her to be so lucky and come back on her own. Julian, what about my brother's side? My dad has already passed away from heart disease, and my brother is my only family. I really don't want anything to happen to him. Julian, I only have you now. You must help me. I'll think of something. Don't worry, your brother will be fine. At the end of the conversation, Julian even sent Serena a huge heart. Looking at their conversation, the ultrasound report clutched in my hand was torn to shreds. This snow mountain trip was originally planned by Julian. He said he wanted to take me to the snow mountain to see the sunrise. He said the sunrise on the snow mountain was the most beautiful. He wanted to take me to see the most beautiful things in the world. Married for 7 years, Julian had always treated me as if it were the beginning, so I never doubted him. The day before we left, I unexpectedly discovered that I was pregnant. This news came too suddenly and shocked me too much. For so long, I had done all the necessary checkups and taken all the necessary medicine. But no matter how hard we tried, we still couldn't conceive. And now, miraculously, I was pregnant. I held the report and looked at it again and again, repeatedly confirming whether the information on it was true. At that time, I couldn't wait to fly to Julian's side and tell him the good news. But I held back. I folded the report neatly and put it in my bag. I wanted to tell Julian this best news in the most beautiful place. But I never expected that before the news could be spoken, I would be killed by him. At that time, I happily followed Julian. He took me into the no man's land. He said he knew a secret place that was an excellent place to watch the sunrise. Although I was a little scared in my heart, I thought that with Julian by my side, I followed him in without any doubt. Unexpectedly, it started to snow not long after we walked. The snow fell harder and harder, and we were trapped in a cave. It was getting darker and darker, but the snow showed no sign of stopping, so Julian suggested that he go out to find a rescue team first. I was so stupid at the time that I actually believed his nonsense. And once he left, he never came back. The moment before I died, I was still thinking, if Julian brought people back and saw my body, would he be very sad? Now it seems he's not sad at all. He's probably overjoyed. I bought a late-night flight back to City A. I don't want to see Julian's face for a single moment now. The afternoon I returned to City A, Julian came back. He excitedly hugged me and spun me around several times, then placed the painstakingly pieced-together report in front of me. "Arya, how could you not tell me about this wonderful news?" Looking at the crookedly assembled report, it was just like my heart, torn apart by him, leaving behind ugly scars forever. "I wanted to tell you when we watched the sunrise, but we didn't see the sunrise." "It doesn't matter, I know now. I bought groceries and a chicken. You just sit here and relax. I'll make chicken soup for you." Julian thoughtfully settled me on the sofa and turned to take the groceries into the kitchen. Watching Julian bustling about in the kitchen, I laughed as I touched my stomach. If I hadn't inadvertently seen the bright red mushrooms among the groceries he bought, I might have actually believed Julian cared about this child. "Baby, look, your biological father, for the sake of his white moonlight, even knowing of your existence, he's still cruel enough to kill us. So 7 years of affection can't compare to one glance back from his white moonlight." 7 years ago, Serena went abroad without warning, and Julian searched for her all over the world like a madman, but he couldn't find her. Later Julian gave up. He found me, who had always secretly loved him, and proposed marriage. After the wedding, Julian was always a good husband. He would cater to my preferences, and cook and do laundry for me. I always thought he loved me. Until, after I died, I saw him with Serena, and I realized that I had always been a substitute. The one Julian loved was always Serena. My heart was filled with resentment, watching them entwined. I wanted to eat their bones and drink their blood. But I never thought I would really be reborn. Heaven has given me another life. I will definitely make them pay the price. Julian was busy in the kitchen for a long time before finally bringing out a bowl of chicken soup. "Arya, drink a bowl of chicken soup first to settle your stomach. It has your favorite mushrooms in it." Looking at the chicken soup placed in front of me, I looked at Julian. A trace of coldness flashed in his expectant eyes. I picked up the bowl, and just as it approached my lips, my hand suddenly slipped, and I dropped the bowl, rushing into the bathroom. I closed the bathroom door and dry heaved for a long time, completely ignoring Julian's screams in the living room. That bowl of chicken soup was freshly scooped out of the pot by Julian. When I came out of the bathroom, Julian had already taken off his pants and was rolling on the ground, clutching his crotch and screaming. I hurriedly ran over to look at Julian, who was constantly rolling around. "Julian, what's wrong? Quick, call an ambulance." His voice was so soft that I could barely hear him. I struggled to listen for a long time before I heard what he was saying. Looking at Julian's pained expression, I calmly took out my phone and dialed 120. The doctor said Julian had a mild burn, not a big problem, but the affected area was rather sensitive, and he had to pay attention to it. Seeing Julian's difficulty in walking, I offered to take care of him until he recovered. I rarely saw such gratitude in his eyes, but he didn't know that I had deliberately spilled that bowl of soup on his pants. His current pain was far less than the heartache I felt when I saw him and Serena being intimate after I died. Since he could be so cruel and harm me again and again, I would take back every bit of harm he inflicted on me. Julian stayed in bed for days after returning home. And during those days, I took care of him meticulously. I knew Julian loved meat, but I kept using the excuse that I felt nauseous at the sight of meat. So every meal was plain boiled vegetables, without a trace of oil. When Julian was a little better, I brought out a bowl of chicken soup, saying I wanted to give him a good boost. Without thinking, Julian drank the chicken soup clean, even eating the chicken and mushrooms inside. After eating, he lay contentedly on the bed, savoring the aftertaste for a while before he reacted. "Arya, where did this chicken soup and mushrooms come from?" "It's the one you made for me last time. I couldn't bear to eat it, so I gave it all to you." Looking at Julian's increasingly ugly complexion, I kindly scooped him another bowl of chicken soup. Julian went to the hospital again, this time for food poisoning. The moment he realized the chicken soup was the chicken soup he made, he immediately got up wanting to rush to the toilet to induce vomiting, but I, accidentally, stuck out my foot and tripped him. He struggled pathetically on the ground for a long time, unable to throw anything up. Watching him lying on the ground, waving his hands in the air and starting to count little men, I finally called for an ambulance. The doctor induced Julian to vomit, gave him an 4, and naturally, I was inevitably lectured by the doctor. A few hours later, Julian's mind had recovered quite a bit. I looked at the time, borrowed a wheelchair and pushed Julian to go for a walk in the hospital garden. Just as we were about to exit the emergency room door, we bumped into Serena and her brother Marcus, who were also about to go out. "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't notice. Are you?" "Huh? Aren't you Serena?" Aren't you?" Serena looked at me with a surprised expression, stopping mid-sentence. However, from her hesitant expression, I could roughly guess whose hand the poisonous mushroom came from. "Julian, look, isn't this Serena?" I kindly reminded him. Only then did Serena notice Julian sitting in the wheelchair. She looked at Julian somewhat awkwardly, and I noticed that the hand she had originally been linking with Marcus's had unconsciously let go. "Arya, let's go, she's not Serena." Julian, expressionless, gripped the wheelchair's armrests tightly, his hands turning white with anger. Julian pushed the wheelchair, ready to leave, and I hurried to follow. "Julian." Serena also wanted to follow, but she was stopped by a nurse who ran up from behind. Mr. Marcus, you forgot to take your report." "Nothing major, just a bad stomach, acute gastroenteritis. Just eat lightly when you get back." The nurse's voice wasn't loud, but we all heard it. I clearly felt Julian stiffen. His already expressionless face became even darker after hearing the nurse's words. Before the nurse could leave, Julian had already sprung from his wheelchair. Before Serena and Marcus could react, Julian's fist landed on Marcus's face. Serena screamed and ran to break them up, but she was no match for Julian in his rage. With a light wave of his hand, Serena was pushed to the ground. The security guards at the emergency room entrance, seeing the fight, rushed over to separate them, and the scene became chaotic. I stood aside, quietly watching the farce. This unexpected encounter was within my expectations. During the time I was a soul, I followed Julian. In the previous life, after returning from the snow mountain, Julian had a fever, whether due to psychological or physical reasons, and came to the hospital for treatment at this same time. At that time, he was in a hurry and didn't notice Serena and Marcus brushing past him. But I noticed. Serena kept telling Julian that her brother was in critical condition, his life hanging by a thread, and that he needed a lot of money for heart surgery, which is why Julian thought of insurance fraud. But in reality, her brother's life wasn't in danger. It was true that Marcus had heart disease, but it wasn't that serious, just needing rest and avoiding strenuous exercise. What they wanted was the money. Finally forced to stop by the security guards, Julian stopped hitting He looked at Marcus lying on the ground, his face covered in blood, and then at Serena weeping beside him. He shook off the security guard's hands and walked away without looking back. I silently followed Julian, watching his anger, watching his heartache, but it was far from enough. After discovering he was deceived, Julian's attitude towards me was noticeably different from before. Like now. I was cleaning out the clothes in the closet when Julian wrapped his arms around my waist from behind, rubbing his face against my neck. "Arya, you smell so good today." He would never have done this before. Although he was very good to me, there was always a distance between us. At that time, I thought it was because he was naturally not good at interacting with people. Later, I realized that it was just because he always had someone else in his heart. I instinctively felt disgusted by his current behavior, and reached out to remove his hand from my waist. "I'm pregnant." "It's okay, it's still early in the pregnancy." As he spoke, he swept me up in his arms and gently placed me on the bed. Just as Julian was about to make his next move, his phone rang. He picked up his phone and glanced at it, then hung up impatiently. But the phone kept ringing insistently, again and again. Finally, he got up and answered the phone. I couldn't hear what was being said on the other end, but based on the voice, I was sure it was Serena. "You wait for me there obediently, I'll be right there." From his initial impatience to his now worried tone, only a few words separated them. After hanging up, Julian didn't even glance at me. He grabbed his coat from the bed and went out. Hearing the heavy sound of the door closing, I thought I would at least feel a tightness in my chest, but I didn't. Instead, I felt a sense of relief. So not loving someone is this easy. I don't know what Serena did, but Julian didn't come back all night. When he returned, I could clearly feel that Julian had forgiven her deception. He even hummed a song while choosing his clothes in the closet. "Arya, I'm going with you for your prenatal checkup today. Do you think the black coat or the gray coat looks better on me?" He tried them on in front of the mirror, as if he was the one going for the prenatal checkup. I casually pointed to the black coat. He held it up in front of the mirror, admiring it again and again, but in the end he chose the gray coat. Julian accompanied me to the hospital, but he kept looking at his phone distractedly, then glancing outside the hospital. When I saw Serena appear at the entrance of the obstetrics and gynecology department, I realized that he had been waiting for Serena all along. "Arya, what a coincidence. Are you here for a prenatal checkup too?" Looking at Serena, who was glowing with health as she stroked her stomach, I realized that Julian had forgiven her because of this. Serena eagerly came over and took my hand. Behind her was Marcus, whose face still had bruises. I subtly withdrew my hand and exchanged a few pleasantries with Serena. Just as I was about to get up and go to the examination room for my prenatal checkup, I didn't know whose foot tripped me. My stomach slammed into the corner of the wall, and a sharp pain swept over me. In the dizziness, I only saw many medical staff running towards me, and Serena's last smile. Waking up to the beeping of the heart monitor, the sharp smell of disinfectant made me frown. Julian and Serena's laughter reached my ears. Seeing that I was awake, they immediately put on worried expressions. "Arya, are you alright? Is there anything else that feels uncomfortable?" Julian helped me sit up and placed a cushion behind my back, so I could lean back comfortably. He was always like this, so good at taking care of people, but who would have thought that beneath his Mr. Perfect facade, he hid a heart of snakes and scorpions. "Arya, I'm sorry, it's my fault, I really didn't mean to. I didn't expect you to step on my foot really." "Arya, don't worry, you're still young, you can definitely have another child." Serena looked at me with slightly reddened eyes, but her eyes couldn't hide her triumphant look. I placed my hands on my flat stomach, so that was their purpose. They couldn't tolerate this child? It was my incompetence. In my previous life, I couldn't protect this child, and in this life I still couldn't protect this child. "Arya, I believe Serena didn't do it on purpose, I've already forgiven her." As he said that, Julian handed me a glass of hot water, carefully reminding me that it was hot. I didn't take the water, just looked at Julian with red eyes. The pain in my heart was no less than when I found out he killed me for the insurance money. "Forgive? What gives you the right to forgive her on my behalf?" My hoarse voice spat out each word, revealing all my hatred. "Arya, don't go too far. You stepped on someone else's foot yourself. You weren't careful. How can you blame Serena?" Julian slammed the water glass heavily on the table. The splashing water even burned my hand. Watching Julian protect Serena behind him, I couldn't even utter a word of blame. I turned away, not wanting to see this scum and bitch anymore. Julian only left behind a sentence of unreasonable, before leaving the ward with Serena. Since the child was lost, Julian has rarely come home. I know he's gone to take care of Serena, but it's fine this way, giving me more time to study. Actually, it's not that I'm incapable, it's just that Julian took such good care of me after we got married that I forgot I used to be a top student. While Julian isn't home, I can just pick up all the things I dropped before. I know Julian's company is on the rise right now, and he needs manpower and connections. I used my silver tongue, plus my past connections, and even bought off some people to create public opinion. Soon, Julian's company went from a period of growth to a decline. When he came to find me, I was organizing company documents. That's right, I also started a company, with the purpose of poaching all of Julian's staff. I want to bankrupt Julian. Arya, is this fun for you? Julian threw the documents in his hand, all over me. Some papers scratched my eye, and it hurt a little. Fun? Of course it's fun. I want you to go bankrupt, to kneel in front of me and beg. What good would my bankruptcy do you? Don't forget, we're husband and wife. Looking at Julian, who was getting a bit desperate, I slowly opened the drawer next to me. I'd almost forgotten if you hadn't mentioned it. I took a document from the drawer and threw it at Julian. This is the divorce agreement. I've already hired a lawyer. Whether you agree or not, I'm determined to get a divorce. Julian glanced at the divorce agreement in his hand, then tore it to shreds and threw it on the ground. He probably never thought I would file for divorce. He always knew that I loved him so much, so he unscrupulously took advantage of my love. Isn't it just losing a child? Do you have to go this far? There wasn't a trace of emotion on Julian's cold face, but his icy words were like a sharp sword, piercing my heart. Isn't it just? Julian, that was a living, breathing life. So what? Julian looked at me with a condescending attitude, as if the dead child had nothing to do with him. That's right, he would only feel sorry for Serena's child. What did my child with him amount to? Why did I used to like Julian so much? Now he only makes me feel disgusted. I kicked Julian out of the company, and before he left, he was still shouting that I would regret it. Looking at his ugly face, I think the thing I regret most is marrying him. Because of my meddling, Julian's company plummeted. He came to my company to cause trouble many times, and I had people kick him out each time. Until the last time he came to make a scene, I threw the divorce certificate at him. Holding the divorce certificate, Julian knelt in front of me for the first time, begging me not to be so ruthless. Looking at him, clearly in his prime, with already a few white hairs at his temples, I felt for the first time that he was finally getting his just desserts. I had someone investigate Julian. He wasn't doing well after the bankruptcy. Serena, pregnant and knowing that Julian was bankrupt, started acting out in all sorts of ways. She completely changed from her previous gentle and pitiful demeanor, ordering Julian around. But I know what kind of person Julian is better than anyone. He likes to be admired and enjoys the feeling of controlling everything, which is why I voluntarily resigned after marriage in my previous life, just to be the woman behind him. Perhaps it's because he truly loves Serena, or perhaps because of the child in Serena's belly. He endured her antics again and again. I never knew Julian had such a side to him. I sat on the sofa, watching Julian kneeling on the ground, dejected, and reached out to pinch his chin, digging my nails in hard. Watching Julian's painful expression, I released my hand with satisfaction. Julian, the ruthless one has always been you. Yes, the ruthless one has always been him. From the previous life to this life, he has never considered my feelings. Julian left. I had the security guards drag him out. The security guards threw him on the main road, his disheveled appearance making him look like a dog. Newly established companies always have a lot to do, and I work overtime until very late every day. Looking up at the clock on the wall, it was already past 1 in the morning. Just as I was about to shut down the computer, a new email notification popped up. I opened it, and it was truly an unexpected gain. I had asked someone to investigate why Serena left without saying goodbye 7 years ago, and why she suddenly reappeared now. Unexpectedly, I also gained another piece of information. Satisfied, I closed the email, tidied up the files on my desk, stretched, and left the company. But unexpectedly, an accident happened not far from my house. A stranger suddenly pulled me into a nearby alley and tried to grope me. He was wearing a baseball cap and a mask, so I couldn't see his face. During the struggle, I took out the pepper spray from my bag and sprayed it hard into his eyes. The man roared and let go of me. I seized the opportunity to escape from the alley. The man still wanted to chase after me, but I ran to the nearest police station as quickly as possible. Based on my description and the surveillance footage, the police soon caught the man who wanted to assault me. I had seen that man before in a photo. The day Julian was thrown onto the street by security, I saw the fierce glint in his eyes as he walked away. My intuition told me that, given Julian's personality, he would definitely want to take revenge on me. I hired someone to follow Julian, and that person took pictures of Julian giving a sum of money to this man. However, because the distance was a bit far, the person I hired didn't clearly hear what they were saying. But I could more or less guess it. I just didn't know which day he would come to take revenge, so I always kept pepper spray in my bag. I handed the evidence in my hand to the police. With the testimony and physical evidence gathered, Julian and that man were soon locked up. Watching Julian's resentful gaze as he was being taken away, I smiled slightly at him. Behave yourself well inside. When you come out, I'll have an even bigger surprise for you. Julian was sentenced to 3 years in prison for inciting others to rape, though the attempt failed. During this time, Serena's child was born. Serena sat on the sofa in my office, holding her 1-month-old baby, as haughty as a peacock. Miss Serena, what did you say just now? I cleaned my ears, wanting to be sure I hadn't misheard. I never expected Serena to make such a shameless request. Don't pretend you can't hear me. You're the one who put Julian in there. Now he can't support this family, so you have to take responsibility. This child is Julian's, and you have to be responsible for all his expenses, as well as my labor for taking care of him. Serena went on and on about her demands, and I just found it laughable. Why should I be responsible? You're Julian's wife, and you already terminated one of his children. Now this is his only child, of course you have to be responsible. Miss Serena, have you forgotten? Julian and I are divorced. He has nothing to do with me now. Also, you and I both know how my child was lost in the first place. But I don't want to waste any more time on such meaningless things. Please leave. Don't disturb my work. I issued an eviction order, but Serena didn't seem to want to leave. I can't control that much. Anyway, you have to give me money. If you don't give me money, I'll come here and make a scene every day, and see if you can continue your work. As soon as Serena said this, I immediately put down the pen in my hand, looked up at her, and smiled. Serena, there are some things I didn't want to say so harshly. You know better than anyone whose child this is. Why did you leave without saying goodbye 7 years ago? And your half-brother. Don't think I don't know anything. Hearing my words, Serena's face changed instantly. That email from that night clearly stated that Serena's child was Marcus. Marcus' real name isn't Marcus. His real name is Marcus. 7 years ago, in the year when Julian loved Serena the most, Serena fell in love with Marcus, whom she met online. At that time, Marcus was already abroad. Serena abandoned everything in China just to follow Marcus. 2 years ago, Marcus was arrested abroad for raping a woman, and someone died. He was eventually deported back to China. Serena returned to China with Marcus at that time. But after returning to China, Marcus disappeared, and the current Marcus, Serena's half-brother, appeared. When Serena found Julian, she told a different story. She said her father had died of a heart attack abroad, and her only brother was on the verge of death. Her sudden departure 7 years ago was because her brother was in danger at that time. Serena had had countless abortions for Marcus. They kept this one only to scam Julian out of his money. Seeing Serena's tightly pursed lips in silence, I stood up, opened the office door, and ushered her out. I kept wondering, what would Julian's reaction be if he knew the whole truth? Just thinking about Julian's expression at that time makes me want to laugh. I was waiting for Julian to come out and tell him this surprise properly. Sure enough, Julian didn't disappoint me. He had his sentence reduced by another year for good behavior inside. 2 years later, he limped out. The Julian before me was no longer the spirited youth he once was. His hair had turned gray, and while he wasn't exactly skin and bones, he had certainly lost a lot of weight. He even had a limp. It seemed his days inside hadn't been easy. He stood before me, his eyes red with rage, staring at me fiercely like a beast emerging from the darkness, ready to devour me in the next second. I sat on the sofa, leisurely sipping my coffee, watching Julian smash things around my office like a wild dog. After he had vented all his anger, I slowly spoke. When you killed my child, did you ever think you'd end up like this? It was just an unformed little beast. You ruined me like this for something that hadn't even been born yet. Don't you feel guilty? Ha ha ha. Little beast? A perfect description. That was his own flesh and blood. If the child was a little beast, then what was he? I stood up, walked to Julian in my newly bought high heels, and slapped him hard across the face. Julian was stunned by the slap, but he quickly recovered and tried to retaliate, only to be held back by the security guards I had called. Looking at Julian, who was unable to resist, I raised my hand and slapped him again. These 2 slaps are for my child who was killed by you. In the previous life and in this life, he had killed that poor child twice. I raised my foot and kicked Julian hard in the groin. This kick was for the me of the previous life, the one who had once loved him deeply but was ruthlessly killed by him. Seeing blood seeping from the corners of Julian's mouth as he clutched his groin in pain and knelt on the ground, I took a deep breath, then turned and took out a file folder from the bottom drawer. I pulled out the documents and threw them at Julian's feet, the scattered papers falling around him. Inside were all the materials I had collected about Serena and Marcus. The moment he saw the contents, I clearly saw Julian tremble all over. His pig-like howls echoed throughout my office, and then with bloodshot eyes, he ran out of the company like a madman. How could I miss such a good show? I called a driver, took the car, and arrived at Serena's apartment building ahead of time. I saw Julian staggeringly open Serena's door, and immediately a woman's scream erupted from inside. Julian grabbed Serena's hair and dragged her out of the house, then began punching and kicking her. Serena, disheveled, fell to the ground, wanting to resist but to no avail, only able to desperately protect herself with her hands. Beside her, the terrified and crying little boy ran over to protect his mother, but Julian kicked him into the middle of the road. There were many vehicles on the road, and the little boy lay there forever. Julian choked Serena's neck, constantly slamming the back of her head against the ground. Seeing the child already lying in a pool of blood, and Serena being choked by Julian, Marcus also went crazy and grabbed a kitchen knife from the house and hacked at Julian. Julian took a knife to the back, and I saw him gasp in pain. However, this knife shouldn't be much to him, after all. The days inside were much harder than this knife. Julian snatched the knife from Marcus and stabbed it straight into his heart. Marcus died, the child died, and as Serena took her last breath, I called the police. Julian was sent in again, and this time, it was for intentional homicide. He would only be able to spend the rest of his life inside. Looking at the clear and cloudless sky, I breathed a long sigh of relief. In my previous life, I was too foolish, and in this life, I just want to be myself.